Commissioner Jessica Vega Peterson, who represents the district on the Multnomah County Board of Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Yep. Yeah, okay. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come here tonight, which is with us to discuss, which is obviously a very important, which is obviously a very important subject to talk about, the shelter that's going to be at 6144 Southeast Foster Street. So I appreciate the mayor, Chair Kabori, and everyone who's here from the staff in the Joint Office of Homeless Services to talk about this issue. So I know that there are a lot of questions tonight, and we definitely, the electeds are probably saying we're not going to talk very long so that we can have time for your questions. And also to make sure that we're going to be able to provide information to you that I think will be helpful in answering some of those questions. I'm here tonight because this is actually my district that I represent on the Multnomah County Commission. This is right in the heart of District 3 that I represent. It also goes out to East Portland, which is where I live, where we have both the family shelter and the Anson shelter in the neighborhood that I live. And so I understand that placement of a shelter can cause a lot of concerns for neighbors and the community, and have some questions about how things are going to work. I'm hoping that everybody can think of tonight as the beginning of a dialogue that's going to happen about what this shelter is going to look like and how we can put a plan in place that best meets the community's needs and concerns about this shelter. We have a start of a process that will last for at least 9 months and have a chance for a lot of conversations about what that's going to look like. We have seen our community come together many times since I've been on the commission in the past year to talk about the importance of addressing the issues of homelessness and what we can do as a community to solve this. These shelters are one of the ways that we do that, in addition to preventing people from becoming homeless in the first place, and of course finding permanent housing for people, which I think is the ultimate goal that we all have. And I know that there are specific concerns about how this shelter is going to impact the neighborhood here with the Mount Scott Learning Center. I had a chance to speak with the leadership at Mount Scott on Friday, and I'm hoping they're here to ask any more questions that they have. But again, I want to reiterate that we're beginning a dialogue to talk about how we can really address the needs that the communities have. And I also want to point out, just as the case is in East Portland, a lot of the people that we're going to be sheltering are already here in the community. We know this from the point of counts that we do every year about our homeless population, and also the recent report that came out, the Domicile Unknown report, that unfortunately showed that there were 80 people who died while experiencing homelessness in the last year. That people are actually in this neighborhood, and so that is part of one of the discussion points, the decision points of having a shelter here. So we know we have needs in this area. We know this is one of the ways to address those, and we're looking forward to having a beginning of the dialogue tonight. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Whitaker.
Thank you, Commissioner. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. And first of all, I want to apologize to the crowd outside that did not get in tonight. I think there was as many people who were turned away tonight as there are in this room. Personally, I will pledge to come back. Let's find another night. This is not a quick process, and it's one where I think we need to have a robust conversation, and everybody needs to feel like they're included in the conversation. So let's start with the obvious. I think everybody in this room agrees that we have a humanitarian crisis on our hands here in the United States, especially up and down the West Coast, and yes, right here in Portland, Oregon. We've got a lot of people who are sleeping on our streets. And let's acknowledge that while people may have different opinions about what to do about this, the emotions run deep and people care. And I want to start with what I hear overwhelmingly. I just want us to acknowledge one thing. People tell me repeatedly, about 8 times a day, Mr. Mayor, we want you to get people off of our streets, get them whatever help they need to get off, and stay off the streets. But Mr. Mayor, whatever you and your colleagues do, make sure it is compassionate in terms of the approach. So we may have differences of opinion here tonight, and that is okay. That is okay. But I think we start from a point of mutual desire to be a compassionate community. And to that end, my administration, working with the county chair and the county commission and my colleagues on the Portland City Council and service providers all across the city and across the county, we have committed record amounts of revenues and resources towards the Joint Office of Homeless Services. We've decided to consolidate our efforts, and we have put record amounts of funding and resources behind homeless prevention. That's things like rent assistance for low-income families. Over the last 2 years, we have doubled the amount of shelter space available. Why? Because that gets people from out of doorways, out of parks, out from under overpasses, and into a dry, safe environment where they can gain access to social services and hopefully get off the streets and stay off the streets. We've invested in interventions like mental health services and addiction services and domestic violence survivorship services and youth services, because there's a lot of people living on our streets who need access to those services in order to gain stability in their lives. Without the things that we've invested in, and by the way, the city and the county collectively, it's been about $100 million through the joint office over the last 2 years. 6,000 people last year gained access to housing through that effort. Without that effort, our circumstances on our street would be a lot worse than they are today. Why are we investing in shelter? We're investing in shelter because it gets people off the sidewalks. They have access to running water. They have access to toilets. They have access to laundry. And most important of all, they have access to social services, the kinds I just described, that can help reconnect them with their lives and their families and their community. And as Commissioner Vega-Peterson just mentioned, people aren't moving here in large numbers to take advantage of the largesse in the city of Portland. It's not fun to be homeless in the city of Portland. And we know that the vast majority of people who are living on our streets are people who've been here for a long time. They are Portlanders. We're investing in shelter because it gets people off the streets. There has been some limited success. I'm not here to pop champagne corks with you tonight. There's a lot of work to be done, but there have been some limited successes. Other cities, in their point-in-time count, their federal head count, which we do every couple of years, other cities on the West Coast saw their unsheltered homeless population, that's the people on the streets, people you see, their percentages went up as high as 49% over that 2-year period. We invested, as I said, in shelter. Our unsheltered homeless count actually went down 12%. We were the outlier on the West Coast. We were the outlier on the West Coast. Why this neighborhood? I know that's probably the number one question people are asking. Why are you doing this here in this neighborhood and not somewhere else? Well, we are doing it in other places. We're having equally difficult conversations in other parts of the city, but the primary reason for here is that 22% of the unsheltered homeless population in our city, between the Willamette River and 82nd Avenue in Southeast, is located here. This is the highest concentration of unsheltered homeless people than in any other neighborhood in the city of Portland. That's not a positive, right? And we need to figure out how we can work together as a community to solve what is our community problem. We've made a lot of investments in this neighborhood, the ones that I jotted down. The Bread and Roses Market, which a lot of you are fans of, the Foster Market. A lot of people come from all over the city to take advantage of that. Tango Periton. PBOT's working on some of its upcoming investments, the Portland Bureau of Transportation, like the Foster Streetscape. I know some of you want to talk to me about that. I'm good with that too. But what we need to do is figure out how we as a community, how are we as Portland going to address and solve this problem. We're here to hear from you tonight. We don't have any monopoly on the truth. We all have a stake in the future of this city. You have an important stake in this community, in this neighborhood. We're here genuinely with humility to hear what you have to say. So thank you for having me. Again, I'm sorry to the people who couldn't come in because of the fire code.
Volunteer, we know that we have other neighbors who won't be able to listen first. George Devenport.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Devenport. I'm the Executive Director of Transition Projects. For those who are not familiar with our agency, we're one of a handful of social service agencies in our community that operate shelters. We're the largest operator of publicly funded shelter in the community. We're currently operating about 8 different shelters in different neighborhoods across the city. My role here tonight really is to answer questions that you may have, and we'll see what questions come up about what this shelter will look like when it's in operation. How it'll be run, who's likely to be inside. A lot of these questions were addressed in a frequently asked question, the FAQ sheet that I presume a lot of you saw or accessed online. What I can tell you just briefly, and I want to be very clear about this, is that the shelter that's being proposed would be a 24/7 operation. This is a shelter that will be open day and night. And why that's important is because not all of our shelters in our city are 24/7. Some of them, due to funding restrictions and other restrictions, are nighttime only, which means all the guests have to go out rather painfully early in the morning and are out all day before they can come back in late afternoon. That's not the model being proposed here. And that is critical as well because it gives the operator and other social service agencies and county and city offices the opportunity to engage with individuals who are staying in that shelter. And by engage with them, I mean to say, begin that conversation around what their particular challenges or barriers look like, begin to connect them to the services that will be most useful to them, and help them achieve the one thing we're all interested in doing, and that is helping those individuals end their homelessness, regain stability in their life, and move on. We are not in this business of social service, particularly around homeless services, to provide shelter. But sadly, for the reasons that you're all familiar, for the reasons mentioned earlier, shelter is a necessary resource in our community. Our housing market is too hot. We cannot house people who are experiencing homelessness nearly fast enough. And so for many, their homelessness will continue to last. Our job as social service providers, supported by the community around our facilities, is to help those individuals move out of that shelter as quickly as possible and regain housing. That's why we get up in the morning. Again, I'm happy to answer more questions about the shelter and what it'll look like, but I'll try to wait to hear what questions may come up first. So with that,
hello everyone, my name is Alexander. I'm a millennial. I am a small business owner, and I live in the Fosterville neighborhood. And I just, community support is essential for whatever we as individuals or neighborhoods do. Sorry about that. We all have support networks in place, whether it's family, friends, neighbors. But what happens when you don't have that support network? You can only think about yourself. No one's there to assist you. You're concerned about, where your next meal is coming from. Where you're going to sleep. And, Portland cannot just provide housing. There must also be like a concerted effort, community support, social workers, assistance even from, neighbors, talking about, how to create a budget, how to stay in a house, how to keep it clean. Basic things like this. Portland is different, and being part of the community here is really valued. Helping a neighbor if you're able. Recognizing yourself when you need help and being able to go out and ask and say, hey, I really need help with this. Just a single candle can ignite millions. Your example does set an example. And I know that we all can't be perfect all the time, and we all have our own struggles, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is we should focus on consciously creating community and cultivating. And see this homeless shelter is not necessarily an attack on us, but an opportunity to extend our hands to the people who are less fortunate and come together as a community. Thanks.
I want to thank the staff for coming out, the mayor, commissioner, chair, and transition projects, also to our facilitators and everyone else. My name is Alex Krebs. I own the Tango Studio, Tango Baratine, just a block away, kitty corner from the proposed shelter. I have two specific questions. One is, has the decision already been made to go forward with the shelter, or does the community, the neighborhood, have any influence or say in that decision-making process? City, county, the JOHS, and potentially Portland Police Bureau make a commitment to us right now, if that decision has already been made, that specifically public disturbances within 500 feet of the shelter, that those are abated or perhaps prevented in some way. According to a 1999 research paper by the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C., they cited that within 500 feet of homeless shelters, there was a large increase in public disturbances. We're not talking about high crime necessarily, but things like garbage, yelling, cussing, urination, things like that. I'm within that. I'm 350 feet away, and the thought of coming in at 10 a.m. in the morning and needing to hose down urine off my sidewalk is not pleasing. I agree that we need to find a solution. There is a problem in Portland, but specifically wanting to know, addressing this concern of public disturbances within 500 feet. I also went out to the Willamette Center today and the Columbia Shelter, and I spoke with neighboring businesses, What's New Furniture and Next Adventure, and they said since the Columbia Shelter had gone in, they weren't happy about the public disturbances that were occurring. Again, we're not talking high crime, but specifically, how do we make sure the area is clean and safe within the vicinity of the shelter?
Yeah, I'll start. I will give everyone a break. Yes, the decision has been made that this is the location. Oh, wow.
Please allow the chair to answer your questions.
There are a lot of decisions that have yet to be made. So this is part of
What does it matter?
Why are we even staying and wasting our time?
Let's go.
The decision's already been made.
What about your house?
Right.
Where do you live? You're going to tell us where you live. Where's your shelter? Where's your shelter?
Please allow him to answer.
You turn off his mic?
The reason that this meeting is important is because I'm trying to speak into the
Pick up your mic.
Stand up. Sorry, I'll stand up. There we go. That's
Earn your $200,000 a year.
So the reason that this meeting is important is to get clarity around what we're talking about when we're talking about a shelter in this case. Because the one you cited, the Columbia shelter, is a temporary shelter. It is evening hours only, so people do have to come in, line up, come inside, and then they leave in the morning. That's exactly what we're not talking about here. So, and George was referring to this, we're talking about a place that people get to come, they have a reserved bed. Only the people who are staying there have any reason to come there because there are no daytime walk-up services. So that means there isn't going to be associated sort of camping close by. There aren't going to be those kinds of issues. I'm just explaining why this matters, right? So this isn't a sort of nighttime line up each day, then find a place to be in the morning. It is come inside, have a reserved place, bring your belongings, you'll have a place to take a shower, you'll have a place to use the bathroom, but more importantly, you'll have a place to access the critical services that you need to move out of that shelter and back into permanent housing in the community, which is what folks who are coming to that shelter want. It's an opportunity for folks to rebuild thetheir lives. They take that opportunity seriously. That's what we've got at the Willamette Center, at the New Gresham Women's Shelter. It is a different model of shelter than I think folks often have in mind, and I don't know what Urban Institute was looking at specifically in terms of shelter.
They were looking at Denver.
In Denver. So I'm happy to go look at that particular article, but we are trying in the formulation of this shelter to address the very concerns that you have around, are there going to be spillover impacts for the neighborhood? And in developing the shelter in this particular way, we address a lot of those, and to be more specific and answer your question, we will absolutely work with you between now and when it opens to develop a public safety plan, to engage all the public safety partners and the neighbors and our stakeholders in the community area. We do care. So this shelter.
Take our car and then you ask if you can borrow it?
This shelter will not open until the fall of next year. So there is all right, I'll sit down, but we will work with you on a public safety plan related to this shelter to address the kinds of concerns.
I'm going to ask that everyone hold their comments so that the people in the queue have an opportunity to present the questions that they have. Thank you.
This is me. Where are they going to go in the daytime when it's closed? Stay there during the day.
Please, let this gentleman speak.
For you right here across the room, I actually have some answers to your 500 feet. My name is Mason Lehman. I'm actually the owner of Boyer Art Supply. We're neighbors to the East Moreland Selwood shelter that was opened up in the last year. This is what we have seen. My business has experienced an excessive crime, garbage, hostility, drug use, theft since the shelter is open. People doing drugs and fighting in front of our business and our neighbors, their community. I want them to know, seeing how we've experienced it every single day since the other shelter is open. We have gotten no resolution from it. We've complained, we've taken the proper channels, we filed reports, and it doesn't change. So that's really where it's at. My time's about up, but I really need you guys to fight for this because we lost. We didn't even know it was coming into our neighborhood. We were told it was a women's shelter, which turned into this. It used to be a St. Vincent de Paul, which was good. It gave food boxes to people. They came, they got food, ate, and then they left. Now we have people coming in all day, all night, and they sleep out in their cars. They take over our parking lot. TIME, I guess I'm out of time, but please fight for your right to keep your neighborhood.
No, more questions.
So here we go. I hear what you're saying.
Did the police come with the package?
In the Willamette Center, which was the first center to open in this new permanent shelter, low barrier approach, which welcomes people who literally have nowhere else to go. We started early, and we've continued through the operation of that shelter to reach out to individuals like you in the neighborhood. Not everyone is thrilled. Clearly, you are not thrilled. You are, okay. And what we've also noticed is many of the neighbors, while not thrilled, look for ways to support that shelter's operation. Through volunteerism, through meal service, and through, frankly, learning to abide by a new reality in their neighborhood. This is something that So sir, those individuals who are staying inside the shelter are expected to comply with various rules. Those rules relate to them being safe and respectful inside the shelter and in the immediate neighborhood around it. And that is part of our job, to work with those individuals to make sure they're abiding by those rules. Okay? It's also our job to listen to people like you when you see that not happening, to follow up on that. And I will follow up with you after this meeting if you want to stay and talk to me. Thank you.
All right, do we have a person on this side? This young lady here.
Hi friends, I'm Haven Wheelock and I live in the neighborhood as well as having had worked with people who are experiencing homeless for 10 years, and I'm really thankful that you guys are starting this conversation. I know it's a really hard conversation and it's a really important conversation. Actually, just on my way here right now, I learned a client that I was working with to try and get into housing who was 41 years old died today. She'd been homeless for a long time, and I'm really heartbroken, and I know it's really scary to think that things could change, but I also have seen how beautiful and wonderful it is when people get stability and they feel safe and they get a chance to engage. And I'm really excited to have this in my communities so that I can be part of the solution in making things change for our community. Because there are challenges, that is not undeniable, but it's also, these are humans that we care about, that are part of our community and that are our neighbors. And so I encourage all of us that you can question it, you can challenge it, you can try and do the best we can. And these humans need houses. They need a place to sleep at night. And yes, they do.
And you get paid to help them.
And I just want to thank you guys for being here. That's all.
Hi there, my name is Sam Nayibi. I am the owner of Bread and Roses Market. Very happy to be in this neighborhood and to have come into this neighborhood. And then, you know, the homeless shelter's coming, and you know, I believe it's within all our values to do the best we can to, you know, get people the help that they need. Especially people that don't want to be homeless, the people that need shelter and assistance and programs and such. So the city's putting this shelter, you know, what sparked the controversy for me was like, what next to 7-Eleven? What across the street from an at-risk youth school? What next to a preschool at YMCA? What down from Arleta? What next to convenience stores? What next to beer? And that's where it all started, on a commercial corridor, an untested, proven type of thing. So then, you know, I'm like, all right, you guys have made your decision. Okay, you know, you've made your decision. But then there are things that we are gonna need in the neighborhood. One of them is, you know, we don't have a police precinct here. We're 4 miles away. 4 miles away from you. Willamette Resource Center is 1 mile, 1.2 miles, I think. We are 4.2 miles away. That increases the response time, and we already have a meth epidemic here. We know our meth houses, we know our crack houses, we know where our neighbors are, we know what's happening here. So, you know, we have that, and then all of a sudden we have all the kids. And, you know, what do we need? We need sexual offender screening. Because we need the kids to be okay. And, you know, that's my time. But basically, you know, it's the infrastructure. We lack the infrastructure to host this thing. And if you want to have us host this thing, give us the infrastructure. Give me police. Just give me police. Thank you.
There's no response from our panel. Mr. Mayor, if you would please listen to Mr. Mayor, thank you.
We don't need a response.
If you don't want to hear, I'm not going to take your time. Do you want to hear it or not?
No.
Yes? Okay, good. So the second thing people tell me, in addition to get people off the streets, and be compassionate about it is address our public safety and our livability issues. And there is no administration, I've been here 11 months, there is no administration who has put more resources into standing up more police patrols, more resources into park rangers, because you remember what we had on the Springwater corridor and what we had in places on the east side like Lentz, Laurelhurst Park, 92nd and Ankeny. We have put into effect at the request of neighborhoods a program to tow delinquent, dilapidated RVs. That's new. We have put in efforts around trash collection, biohazards like needles, graffiti abatement. All of that's new and expanded. We have put into effect partnerships with private sector organizations like the Clean and Safe. I understand the police and the livability thing, and my budgets have reflected my desire, which I've stated many, many times, including when I was running for this office, that we need to go back to a full community policing model. That means foot patrols. I want to give you one statistic that you can take with you. When Bud Clark was the mayor of this city, many, many years ago, he had 300 more police officers than we have today, and 220,000 fewer people living here, and not nearly the same degree of social issues that we're confronting like we are today, around drug addiction, around a lack of community-based mental health resources, around housing prices outstripping household wages 5 to 1. We've got a lot of backfilling to do and a lot of work to build this up. But when the gentleman from Bread and Roses says, we need more policing, there's nobody in this room who's fighting harder for that than I am. And I hope when we get to the budget process, you will work with me to support a full community policing model in the city of Portland. It's a best practice because it reduces opportunistic crime and it builds community trust between the police and the community we serve. That's why President Obama had community policing as part of the 21st century policing platform. I support it. The new chief supports it. I hope you will too.
Why don't you take those funds out of the shelter money?
We trust police, we don't trust you.
We're going to honor your fellow community residents and allow someone else to ask a question.
I guess I don't have a question, but thank you for having this meeting. But for your organization, shame on you for giving just 1 week's notice and telling that it will be there. That's not the way to do it. If you care, you always come and say, if you look at other opportunities, look where you're putting this place. And you say in your FAQ that 368 people are homeless between Willamette River and 82nd Avenue. There's 22% more than downtown, which is about 400 squares in downtown and Old Town. This one between Willamette and 82nd Avenue goes all the way from Burnside to about 80 blocks. That's about 1,600 square feet. So that is how it is spread. And sir, when you mentioned that you wanted to take 8 people come and tell you every day that they want homeless off the streets, that meant they didn't want it in their neighborhood. They wanted it off the street, but at another location that is away from the neighborhood where people live, where single homes live, where children walk across to schools. That is not where they wanted it. Better locations would be, if you care about it, sir, which is a very good resource to have for the community, is closer to maybe 82nd Avenue or 96th Avenue where the Max line comes, or 82nd Avenue where people can hop on the Max line and take a bus straight to 82nd. This area is 1,700 square feet that you're looking at, and there is a spot on 79th and Harold, which is pretty much close to the same square footage which is available right now. But that's just one example I'm giving. I'm sure you have a lot more resources. Here, what you have in your previous shelter that's by the Oaks Park thing, that you have on 658th and White, this is how it looks outside there every day. Wow. This is all of the garbage that's there. I just got it from Google. This is what you see there every day. And you say that in your FAQs that these people have their parole officers who come and talk to them. You gotta be kidding me about that. I don't think that's going to happen. But thank you for giving this opportunity.
I'll go next. My name is Carrie, and I've lived in the neighborhood for nearly 16 years in the same house. I'm the mother of 10-year-old twins, and we certainly all recognize the importance of this issue. And I know I personally certainly commend you, Mayor Wheeler, for addressing this issue, for tackling this issue. It's extraordinarily complex. I do get that, and we all need to have compassion. Increased shelters, programs for the homeless are absolutely the right idea. However, while I know this location is cost effective, I feel strongly that for many reasons, it's not the right location for a low barrier shelter. Primary concern that I'd like to speak to is child safety. Several people have mentioned this, but children, most vulnerable among us, it's our civic duty to protect them and their safety. The area immediately surrounding the proposed shelter is home to 3 Portland public schools, Arleta, Woodstock, and Preston, an alternative high school, a YMCA youth development center, and countless daycare and Montessori facilities, all within a 2 to 10 minute walk from the proposed shelter. Enrollment is upwards of 1,500 at those PPS facilities and the alternative high school alone. So these include families sending their children to Portland public school facilities, as well as PPS teachers, administrators, and staff who could all be put at greater risk with a low barrier shelter. So as indicated by the city, the proposed low barrier shelter standards will admit those with criminal records and raising further concerns about child safety. And I think that is our number one concern, is that this is going to be a low barrier shelter. So from a child safety point of view, this is the wrong location for a low barrier shelter.
Question from this side? The chair, would you like to?
Just keep it at 2 minutes. As this is our first meeting, as I've talked about, I think it's important, I'd like to listen to you, if you don't mind. I mean, if there's a question that you want me to answer, as I said from the start, we have not made every decision. So this is a chance for you to give us your opinion on things, and that's why we are here.
Why not next to you?
Thank you, Chair. One more question from this side.
Hello, and thanks for coming and listening to all of us tonight. Current crime statistics pulled just today from Portland Maps show that the Laurelwood Park, which is immediately adjacent to this building, have 2.5 times higher the property crime rate that's average for the city. There's 5 times the person's crime rate than the rest of the city. And I'm wondering if this was considered when you were citing this, those statistics for a quarter mile around the particular area. So what will be done to mitigate the likely increase in crime? Will this neighborhood get the same treatment as Tim Boyle and Sorrel and get extra patrols? Because I noted after he complained he got committed to foot patrols. But I know that when he got his foot patrols down there, that means that the police that are already spread thin have to be taken from somewhere. Will they be added back into this neighborhood? I know how long it takes to train a police officer, and I know that's not possible by the time the shelter is built. So I'm very concerned. Was there an increase in crime since placing the shelter in the Hanson building or the one in Selwood? And can we see those statistics? Are you prepared to present those tonight? Because I would think that you should be able to provide those to the neighborhood before you put a like shelter here. And then finally, 37% of unsheltered people have substance abuse problems. About 44% have mental health issues. They're very closely tied. Was any thought given to concentrating persons with mental health and substance abuse issues in this area before you made your foregone conclusion, your decision?
So to your first question, we didn't look at the current crime rates in the immediate vicinity.
Who made the decision?
We're really looking at where the need is in the community. We view this as a way to pull people who are sleeping on the sidewalks in the area, in the parks in the area, out of those situations and into a much more supportive environment where they're getting the help that they need to move on. And so, we're looking at where are folks living in public spaces, how can we create a facility that will serve them well and that we can also work with the neighbors to make sure it isn't creating negative impacts for them. So that is how we look at that. The mental health and substance use concentration question, it is true that many folks who are sleeping outside are struggling either with a mental health challenge or an addiction. Right now, they're struggling with those things out in public spaces without access to support. They don't have access to the basic hygiene that they need, and those folks are in the neighborhood now. And so I think this is an opportunity to help them come inside, get access to the bathroom and the shower and a place to have their stuff, but more importantly to start engaging in the treatment that they need in order to get healthy and sober and move on. So we do consider those things as part of our
I don't want to take too long, but the crime statistic you just cited, I believe that crime statistic to be true. And I believe it doesn't matter whether there's a shelter or not, that crime statistic is an unacceptable crime statistic. And regardless of it, I almost view that as a separate conversation. We need to address the crime statistic in this neighborhood. And you need more of a police presence. So let's take that as a given. I know that. And these precincts certainly knows that. I want to ask you a question. You don't have to answer it now, but I want you to think on it. A woman gave, I thought, a really thoughtful statement, and she raised a question, and I'd like to know what other people think. She raised the question about proximity and low barrier. How would you feel about higher barrier? As you answer the question, I'd like to know what you think. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I'll follow up with you afterwards. I'll follow up with you. Okay. I want to let everybody have their voice.
Hello. Hi. My name's Amber. I'm a homeowner just right up the street. I think I'd like to just echo what a lot of other people have said and kind of succinctly sort of sum it up. I really think this is the right idea. I think it's the absolute wrong location. I think the promulgation and dissemination of information from the city, from various elected officials, has been astoundingly poor.
Yeah.
I don't understand how, I think we all agree and disagree on a number of different issues, but I think one thing I would hope we could all agree on is that the most innocent, voiceless, and vulnerable among us are children. And easily at just 3 Portland public school facilities in this direct neighborhood, you have easily over 1,200 enrolled. And families, younger families moving into the neighborhood, you've sandwiched this facility in between a youth development center and an at-risk high school. I don't think you could have tried harder to find a poorer location. It seems to me that economics might have been a big driver in the fact that I've heard from a lot of different people who've talked to a lot of different elected officials. This fit the bill, checked a lot of boxes. It's a vacant facility, it's clean, it's on a main thoroughfare next to one bus line, check, check, check. It just doesn't seem like there was any reasonable, meaningful due diligence in the community, and it's astounding to me because you've got parents, Mayor, who have contracted with the city to send their kids to Portland public schools. And the city is not not making any good faith effort. There's a lot of mention made to have good faith efforts here in the neighborhood with the shelter community. That has not been seen. I think you don't even have to rebuild trust. At this point, you have to build trust.
Amen.
In the interest of time, we're going to take the question from over here.
Ed Meyer made second, and Foster's going to be vacant at the end of January.
Please allow the people in line to give their comments.
Hi, my name is Jay Collins. Me and my wife are homeowners of the area for 36 years in the Arleta neighborhood. What gets me is the panel's complete disregard for our community and children's safety is evident by our lack of involvement in this shelter process and has us all afraid for our children's safety. Your lack of concern for our issues has us afraid of what's going to happen by exposing this low barrier shelter, which is 80 foot from the nearest high school, along with the YMCA and Arleta Elementary. They can purchase alcohol within 10 feet. That's 3 steps from walking out of their bed. They can buy alcohol. And then there's a proposal down the road that's going to build another bar right next to them. A brewery right next door on the sides of the shelter. And to make it short, I'm concerned for the safety of the children. That's wrong. Here's the last question. Why weren't we invited to participate in this planning and location of this shelter project?
There you go.
I think a lot of us can echo the concern that you're not just asking us to accept a shelter, you're asking us to accept what we have seen in the multi-block areas around other shelters, which is people camping, drug use, needles, human waste. Several shelters that I drove by this last week, and I have pictures that people want to see, are full of things that I wouldn't want my kid going to school next to.
No.
And for the folks yelling, not in my backyard, I have to ask, that's your only argument. It's an effort to paint us as being heartless, which is a fallacy argument. I have not heard one reasonable reason why this is a good location.
This business. Well, I'm getting to have the same situation right now. My tenant is thinking about, what is he going to do? Now, the other thing is, you people up downtown, you don't understand. We could all be homeless too. You raise our water bills, we can't even take care of our water. You raise our garbage bills so high, we can't take care of our garbage. And now you want to downsize Foster Road, the main thoroughfare for people coming from the Oregon City down to Foster Road, down to downtown. You want to take it down to 1 lane. What are you people thinking about Foster Road? You're supposed to be improving the area, not downgrading it. Now, how many roads did you guys downsize on the west side? I haven't gotten any answer on that one. Do you happen to know? But anyway, we could all be homeless because and this $15 minimum wage, everybody was so gung-ho about it. Do you know that prices started going up before the first wage increase? I understand it's a separate issue, but I'm telling you what, this could all be coming up here because we are in tax bond measures. You guys keep adding it on, and everybody feels sorry for the kids, everybody feels sorry for the police and the libraries, and we keep adding. It takes me 3 months rent to pay my property tax. Come on, people, we can't live. You gotta live by your means. We can't keep praising these things, and now you want to put a shelter over here. Come on, you're going to have a lot of these big buildings up. You're not doing justice for these people and integrated them all among themselves. What do they do for jobs or for work? You need to put them into the community where maybe put some in each big building that's going up there and provide them some jobs and train them to be maintenance people or do repairs around these buildings and get them off the road. They need to work, not just to find a place for a home. With no work, you're going to have more homeless. Come on, you're tackling the wrong issue at the wrong area. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
I live within 1 block of this shelter. You've spoken to us about compassion, and I'm asking for your compassion. I am the type of person that is 1 month away from being in a homeless shelter. Now that makes it sound like I am for this shelter. I am not, and let me tell you why. This is the wrong location for the shelter, excuse me. I struggle every day to find resources that are close to me. Every day, I live with the possibility of walking down the street and being unsafe in my own neighborhood. I have to take 2 buses or a Lyft bus to get anywhere I need to go. Some days, it takes me 5 hours to get something as simple as a gallon of milk. This is not a good area for this resource. A Lyft bus, this is supposed to be for everybody. This is supposed to be for the disabled. How is this safe in this neighborhood? I cannot cross a street in this neighborhood except for on 64th where there is 1 audible crossing, okay? It's not safe for me there. What about somebody in a wheelchair that cannot get on a public city bus because they are not able to push themselves onto the bus? Let alone 2 buses to get to any of the resources that you all listed as easy access. It's not. I live it every single day. Every single day. We are compassionate. We love this neighborhood. We are compassionate for our children, and we are compassionate for our disabled, and we deserve to be heard too. We want a safe neighborhood for everybody, and there's too many issues that have not been addressed. The resources are not there as you say they are.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, neighbors, for coming out and voicing your concerns, for posing questions to our panel. Our time has come to a prompt end. So let me remind you that staffers are going to remain. So they are going to identify themselves so that you can continue this conversation. You can walk up to them and ask them more questions. We are going to excuse the panel. Okay, the chair before says she's going to stay. Mr. Mayor says he's going to stay. So would you like us to continue to facilitate, or you want individuals? Okay. All right. So Mr. Mayor and the rest of the panel has said they are willing to stay seated and entertain more questions. All right. So I'll take a question from this side, sir.
My name is Justin. I live in this neighborhood. I own a home in this neighborhood. I own a business in this neighborhood. I have kids that go to school in this neighborhood. Obviously, I think the location is terrible in proximity to the schools. I agree that there's a problem and that we have to have a solution. I think this is the wrong way to approach it. I've talked to several other business owners who have already given the notice, given the assumption correctly, it seems, that it's already been decided. That they're already renegotiating their leases. They're not negotiating long-term leases. They're negotiating short-term leases because their plan is to tuck tail, because they've done the research and they've seen the outcomes in other neighborhoods like this gentleman spoke of. And communities are driven through commerce, and we're just now, Foster is just now starting. There's small businesses popping up all along the street. We have a great business association and community and relationship with all of our customers and the people that frequent those establishments. We've all been hoping, well, some of us, a lot of us have been hoping for the streetscape that's been in the works for so long to bring even more business and even more positivity to this community. And this decision flies in the face of 16 years in the making for that, and we're on the edge of that, and we have business owners willing to renegotiate their leases. I'm sorry, that's counterproductive, and it's the wrong space, and this is going to have, the immediate, it's going to have negative repercussions on this community, unfortunately. I'm sorry, this is the right idea, wrong location.
Hey, my name is Peterson. This is Grant. I'm from the Brentwood-Darlington Community Watch Group. Thanks for coming out tonight and having some honest candor with us. Most importantly, in my sight, I see that there's definitely going to be an uptick in some sort of crime element that comes into this neighborhood, and that concerns all of us. I mean, I've personally been dealing with this situation down in Brentwood, Darlington for several months, and to the best of my ability and to the best of my in the trenches view on things, is that without having some advanced enforcement agreement with the East Precinct, you're going to see tragic things happen in the immediate vicinity of this area. And the only way I see this loosening up is to have, the county, of course, is going to need to take on the mantle of fully funding the DA, giving them the tools they need to prosecute property crimes like car theft. Mayor, you're going to have to really get some more people involved in the neighborhood response team. If you can't get those guys staffed up, the small fraction of people that staff that part of our police force, they are stretched beyond thin. And in order for us to be able to effectively handle this, and I'm more than willing to help quell crime in my community, but I don't see the level of organization in Mount Scott, Arleta that needs to happen for them. They're going to get blindsided by this when it opens. So the people out there that live in the immediate vicinity, organize and get some unity in your community, and have your eyes on what's happening out there, because that's the only way you're going to be able to save yourself at this point, because it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen. Well, I mean, according to them it is, so I would just recommend that people seriously think about keeping your eyes on the street and becoming aware that you have more power in the situation than you give yourself credit for. Thanks.
Good idea. Take credit for you did it.
Hi, my name is Hannah Edelson, and I am the Commissary Kitchen Program Manager at the Portland Mercado. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak. I'm really grateful to see our administration being proactive on such a very sad epidemic that is happening in Portland. On behalf of our organization, the Portland Mercado and of Hacienda, down the road, we are in full support of this shelter. Also, I do live in this neighborhood. I was looking over some of the statistics, and they're very sad. Somebody who is 78 years old died on the street. There should never be anybody of that age. I personally grew up upper middle class American. These are humans who are not any different than you or I, and that gentleman who was speaking, any of us could be homeless, and thank God that shelter would be there for us. And also, as a thriving business community, those humans can be employed, and it's actually a wonderful opportunity of community connection and empowerment. I have people coming to our doors all of the time to ask, I want to be a part of the neighborhood, and you're here, and I love your organization so much. How can I be involved? And people are there wanting to be of help in that way. I realized I sidetracked from the point that I wanted to say, which is that my mother eats from food boxes. I grew up in an upper middle class family. I did not ever think that would be my life, that my mother would be hospitalized from not being able to eat. She is a good human, much like other many good humans. I work with many people who are recovering from addiction and who have been homeless. And I have 5 seconds. And not having a home and being cold, I cannot even imagine. It would be a struggle to come back from that, and just having a roof over your head, being connected to services and a community that can uplift and uphold each other is a blessing and a privilege. And I am grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you again for your patience and for your participation. We will have a hard stop at 8:30, so we will continue our questions.
Hello, I'm a resident in the immediate area. I share many of the concerns expressed here tonight. I believe the community wants to support the houseless. However, many of us are concerned with the programmatic issues and populations that will be served at this proposed location. We would like to partner with you, be involved in the decision-making process, and explore multiple humane housing alternative options suited to individual needs. I have loved ones who live in group homes and women's shelters, and I'm very sensitive to this issue. I believe there are multiple safer housing opportunities that can be utilized
for various people in need while considering the surrounding neighborhood. One major concern for me is that Commissioner Peterson's website indicates you will be queuing people from the downtown transition projects, and the shelter will not screen for backgrounds or warrants. I think this way to queue people into shelters wherever it happens to be via local services and utilize a screening process appropriate for each location. Service should be present to help place individuals in appropriate humane housing when police sweep camps. I am very concerned that because this proposal is a permanent low barrier shelter that won't do background checks, some residents there will have high risk legal backgrounds housed in close proximity to schools in our residential neighborhood with alleyways, especially because our area is already underserved by police. Many people on my block are reporting an escalation in crime. I've already had 2 break-in attempts while at home at night in 2 months. Women on either side of me have had their doors kicked in. One of them was burglarized and moved out the following day. We have people regularly coming through our streets at night trying door handles on cars, and sometimes they come even further up into our properties. An officer from East Precinct explained to me that this area is experiencing a major uptick in crime and drugs, and unfortunately, they cannot increase patrols due to staffing. He said Portland police have not increased their staffing since the early 90s, despite an increase in crime and population.
Yeah, we have someone from this side. This gentleman's been waiting a long time.
Hi, my name's Craig Rogers, and I live just down the road, so a lot of what you might be looking at, I've already experienced. Last summer, my neighborhood was under siege, and I live by the East Portland Community Center, so we really needed help. So I sent an email to your spokesperson, July 25th. Before I hit the hay, I think I should tell you this. There's a guy named George who walks around the track next to my house. About 4 months ago, we started taking walks on the hillside bordering the south side of Floyd Light Middle School. The police, park ranger, etc. clear out the homeless on occasion after I make maps, etc. the camps in the park and school property. Lately, they are burning fires in the woods. I have pictures of that. Of course, they leave huge piles of waste behind, always needles and condoms and mail, lots of it from surrounding houses. Lately, we have been a witness to violence taking place between a homeless couple. He hits her upside the head with his elbow and she flies through the air and down. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 days ago, they came back and George and I came across her. She's pretty well beat up with a bloody nose. I will not walk up there by myself. I used to be a place where families could take a walk in the woods. The homeless over time have cut down a lot of the trees to make their camps. My question to you and Ted, do you care about this on any level? You both know that this has all been going on for some time, and yet all that Ted says is, it's all over. So I still have something I want to say here, is that when standards fall, trust is right behind.
So I think everyone's...
We have a person who's standing in line, ma'am.
I think everyone's pointed out how horrible this location is, how close it is to children. How are you people up there, going to justify it when something happens to an innocent child?
Yeah.
Mayor Wheeler, I hope at the end of this you acknowledge that this is a risk. It's not worth taking. And I know that you're not asking, but we're telling you, no. Not in our neighborhood.
I got standards. Distributing all the other neighborhoods. Distributing them in other neighborhoods.
They'll be able to respond in a moment. We want to hear all of the questions, please. So, would you like to take a moment? It has to be really brief, though, so we can hear from the rest of our neighbors. No, they're trying to decide if they want to answer it. So we're going to take the next question, please. So give him time to think about it. He's going to, this gentleman has a question as well. All right? So let's let him know. Okay, Chair Kafori wants to address the challenge.
I would like to say it's very hard to answer questions while people are screaming at you. And I did not hear the question because so many people were yelling. I'm not asking people to feel sorry for me. I'm not asking for that response. I have children as well, and I want you to know that in every conversation that we've had in every neighborhood, people say the same exact thing, and no child to date has been harmed. I think the reason that want to move people inside is so that they're not outside. So they're not rattling people's doors in the middle of the night or rummaging through your cars. These are folks who need to be inside with supervision, with people helping them get clean and sober and get the mental health services that they need. I mean, the people that are going to come in are the people that want to come in.
Put them next to your kids.
Is that right now there are hundreds of people who are sleeping each night in this neighborhood on the street. They want to come inside. They want to get services, and they don't have that option. That is what we are trying to offer them. I think it's I would rather, in my neighborhood, I'm sorry that you've had these experiences, this is my neighborhood, Selvig Moreland neighborhood. I would rather that people are inside at night, sleeping, so that they can take part in the services that are provided. They can take part in the drug and alcohol counseling, the mental health services, and get reconnected into their community so that they can get jobs. These are all and it's worked. There are many, many people who have gone through this system and have recovered.
So
we
put
heard
a
from a
shelter
fellow
there.
today who is alive today because of the services that he received at Central City Concern. He works at the Oregon Food Bank. He has a 40-hour-a-week job. He's paying his bills. There are many stories just like that. We just have to give people a chance.
This gentleman has the floor right now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ernesto Fonseca. I am the CEO of Hacienda CAC. We own the Portland Mercado as well. Thank you very much. I live in the Hollywood district, so you guys know, which is right around 33rd and Broadway. I also have two children, one 10-year-old boy and one 12-year-old girl. I have a wife, of course. Well, not of course, but you know. Comes with baggage sometimes. A couple of weeks ago, I just want to share with you a little story. A couple of weeks ago, a homeless man at the Max station in Hollywood district told my wife, do you have $1? She said, no. Then he said, you have a beautiful face. She said, thank you. And then he said, you have beautiful ass. And all of those things, So it was in a really pretty situation, that she was in. She started walking away, from that thing, from that situation with the homeless man. None of that is pretty to any of us. I work here at the Portland Mercado. I work in Northeast, I work in downtown, and I work in Northeast around Cali and Killingsworth. None of this is pretty for any of us, but something has to give. The efforts that the county as well as the city are putting together are essential for us to be able to provide some housing, some relief to some of these individuals and provide some relief to some of us as residents as well as business owners. Most of the people that suffer from this are individuals, obviously homeowners, but also, small business owners. We at the Portland Mercado receive frequently and over again, people homeless sleeping in our porches, behind our garage, and so on and so forth. Something has to give. Everything I have heard today, it's complaints that this is not the right location, but I haven't heard one single time, where is the right location? No, welcome to know it's not the right location. No, just hear me out, all right? Pushing people away, pushing people away for the sake of pushing them away is not the right thing. No,
Nobody's doing that.
Everybody, there is no family that is perfect on this thing, I have a brother that went through addiction, and we came
Next
through and helped him out, and went through with him and helped him out, to get out of it. Not everybody has that opportunity. All I'm asking you is for you guys to think about, the solutions, and not just bring the issue to the city of the county, but also bring a solution, a proposal, something has to give.
My name is Todd, and I am a neighborhood member here. I own multiple businesses both downtown and on the east side. And I have been a professional marketing and fundraising consultant for over 20 years, and my client list includes the Blanchet House, Clackamas Service Center, St. Vincent de Paul. My question to you, particularly Mayor Wheeler, is why is the city taking the lead in this battle when we have one of the most amazing network of faith-based and nonprofit organizations that are better ingrained in that homeless community? They have a higher rate, success rate of getting people off the streets. And the Blanchet House is a wonderful example. For 70 years, they have served 1,000 free meals a day. They can house up to 60 men in recovery, and they have a beautiful program that's built on respect. They do that with zero public dollars. So why isn't the city funding those organizations instead of duplicating or attempting to duplicate the services that they're already offering?
Very difficult for many folks sleeping outside to see the way forward.
How does the city sign
When you say this neighborhood, are you talking about Foster, Powell, Mount Scott, or are you talking about Southeast Portland? When you talk about the homeless population in this area? Southeast Portland, which is quite a large quadrant. We are 5.6 miles from the city center. Okay. And then two more questions. Wondering the due diligence for choosing this location with regard to crime location. There's so many vacancies on Foster. I just don't understand how this is going to help build our community up. Policing, and then also wondering, Mayor Wheeler, what you are doing to work toward permanent housing for these people and affordability.
Yeah, we are running out of time.
I'll be
so really
super quick.
sir.
I'll be super quick. Number one, you passed a $256 million bond levy. The first project has just been announced on that. That'll create about 1,300 units, half of which will be very low income, so 30% AMA or less. About half of that will be families, so that's working families with kids in the city of Portland. I think the best thing I can actually do is get the permits that are currently in process vested to actual construction. The private sector creates far more housing than the public sector does, but we need to keep making sure that we improve that permitting process, reduce the time, the cost, and hassle factor associated with it to get as many of those units vested as possible.
What about the 6,000 units
Yeah, we can talk about it afterwards.
Okay, we're running out of time. We're going to allow Kenya's side to do one more question. And then, as a reminder, the staffers are staying behind to take more questions.
You know, I find this argument that 22% of the homeless are in this neighborhood requiring this shelter, when that 22% is driven here by design by the rest of the city, enforcing the loitering laws on the west side and emptying out a trail and putting them here. And now you're saying that that engineering of these people being here is now requiring us to put in a very, very dangerous type of institution in our middle of our neighborhoods. I find that very disingenuous. But I'll tell you, you know what? This is not about compassion. If it was compassion, you'd want to put it next to your house. Yeah. It's not about compassion. It's about putting this in a middle-class neighborhood where we can't defend ourselves, where we leave our houses every day, so that we cannot pay attention to our house when we're at work. We can't pay attention to our cars when we're at work. And the wealthy neighborhoods get nothing. You know that. The Northwest Heights, they don't get any. We don't send homeless over there. If 22% of homeless were living there, they wouldn't be living there very long.
That's right.
I've seen police chasing the homeless from those big neighborhoods. We're a vulnerable neighborhood. And that is the only real thing here. This is not about compassion. This is about victimization.
That's right.
We'll take one more. Ms. Kenya, yeah, can we take it from this side? Okay.
I have experience in transitional housing.
I was only going to ask a question. I thought I heard Mayor Wheeler say, would you be interested if it was a higher barrier? And no one's brought that up. So I just want to say, I mean, is that on the table?
All right, so the mayor is saying that it is an open question, so there'll be further discussion about that. Let's take one more question from over here.
Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, if this was housing, if we were going to house families in crisis or women with their children, I'd go down and volunteer. I mean, I've got a 12-year-old girl, and I think most of what you hear that's really loud and angry is just coming from fear, or we don't know what this is going to look like.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you, sir. One last question from Ms. Kenya's side, and then we're going to release our panel, and then their staff is in the back. One of the staffers is waving their hand. We have a couple of hands back there, so please address your further questions with the staff. Thank you.
First of all, thank you guys so much for coming and allowing us an opportunity to speak, both for and against. I am a 20-plus year homeowner here. I first want to know what funds are actually earmarked to be available for this project. So we're talking earmarked so they can't go elsewhere. How long are they guaranteed? When do the policies sunset and the funds and resources become vulnerable? I think that's a very important fact that we need to know. And then also I want to speak to the fact that I have provided transitional housing in an ADU to a couple, and I rented it to them at well below market rate, and I just want to share my experience. Even with support, jobs, and insurance, within months, the 35-year-old gentleman was drinking and abusing prescription drugs again. There were emergency room visits. Eventually they went missing. And then there was a call from a detective in the southeast Spring City that I got while I was at work. And my daughter was at home alone. They had a warrant and they wanted to bring in an interception team, which reads SWAT team, into my home to apprehend them. This happened on 63rd, right next to Schiller, which is a block and a half from your proposed site. The year before, the police had asked to use my backyard, which is 2 blocks away from the proposed site, to surveil a drug house where the residents were dealing meth. Foster Road has long been known as, in the Foster Powell corridor, lots of drug problems. We boast of, kind of a per capita, the most bars, strip clubs, and cannabis shops in the city. And I just think if you're really here to help the vulnerable population get safe and sober, this is not the place to do it. And please ask me.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, neighbors, for coming to our panel. Mr. Mayor, commissioners, and guests, thank you. There are, again, staffers in the back who are willing to continue the conversation.